add to it. It'll be interpreted as artistic.
Oh, definitely. That's fucking. I'm going to leave every last second. That looks okay. What do you think of that? It's beautiful.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah, that looks amazing. Okay, is that me on the ground here?
It is.
Okay.
Here, hold on. Let's get some space there going on.
No, I was actually doing cheers with you. I'm going to taste this.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah, the whiskey's tasty.
The whiskey's tasty. It lasts. It's too thick, isn't
Too
it?
thick.
Yeah. What the fuck?
They've got it all wrong.
Don't buy Norland if it comes up on your Facebook feed. It's a load of shit.
Pretty much.
Wow.
I mean, they're supposed to be enhancing our whiskey drinking experience with that.
Yeah.
How can you get that so wrong?
I knew it was marketing when I was buying them, but I gave in to that. Or I hoped. I had a little bit of hope.
Giving into it.
What?
They're buying into the idea. That's the point. I'd love if that lived up to what they had told us.
Well, they show it all being sculpted and precision engineering and whatever the fuck. And, well, it's just for the future. That's how you market. And the best thing, it is beautifully marketed, all the benefits, all that thing. That's where you learn all the stuff. It's just nice to have a good product at the end of it.
Well, they sell you the idea that you will become a connoisseur because you're going to get all this enhanced experience by drinking out of their glass. They're almost selling you a license to talk bullshit about whiskey. And the reality is that it's flawed. Unless your man had this amazingly large mouth and that's the appropriate size for him.
But also, like, what would be the experience? Is it want to overshadow a whiskey with to have this a glass that's supposed to transform your fucking experience of drinking the whiskey? I just can't. I can't tell myself all those stories. Can you do that with it? I think you really have to kind of go.
Not the experience that I want with a whiskey, and that is the tradition and familiarity, which of course we're going to favour, means that I want a heavy bottom glass.
Yeah.
And I want the rim of that glass to be thin enough so that I can actually taste the whiskey in the specific part of the tongue that I want to direct it to, rather than this jalopy that feels like I've actually got a box in the lip.
That's a good description. We have another go at this little. This Sonia.
The whiskey will grow on me, the glass won't.
You almost think you're going to spill it.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, same as that. I've made a bit of a mess.
That's a waste.
That's a disaster.
And the inside of it, in fairness, it looks a little bit like a used condom.
Yeah, now that you've said that with the colour of it.
So enjoy your next up.
These are serious first world
issues indeed.
Discussions that we're having here. Yeah. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
So it is kind of this the podcast began. I think you might have known that the podcast begins straight away.
Right. From the time you walked in.
Not quite. No, not quite. In fairness, it doesn't. I think it's kind of like if you jump in straight away, or if you say right now it's the podcast. I think. I mean, there's no way to avoid a camera being in the room. What's that?
You formalise it, then do it.
Yeah, you make it into it being a thing. I think then it's suddenly. I can see why Joe Rogan, for example, does it for 3 hours, because I'd say by the time he gets to hour 2 or hour 3, then all the the not the bullshit, but all the pretense kind of dissolves away. There's no room. You can't keep say somebody's in trying to sell a book or a story or whatever the fuck. You can't keep that going for 3 full hours. So then it'll meander, it'll go every way, and at the end of it you'll get kind of an authentic conversation.
There was a great example of that where he brought on Richard Rollins, the guy from Fast and Loud.
Yeah.
I've always enjoyed this guy on TV. Great screen presence.
Okay.
And the first hour was painful. The last 2 hours were amazing.
Yeah.
Now there was no deliberate sales, no deliberate posturing. Just these two guys hadn't worked each other out.
Yeah.
But by the time they got to the end of the first hour, this thing just opened out to be this most remarkable discussion where Joe did what he did best and just exposed this man for the philanthropist and the genius that he was.
Okay.
Where this guy's quite happily humble loud and fast, but ironically humble when you realise what's behind this guy.
Yeah.
But it was a lovely example of journalistic interviewing and the necessity maybe to do what you said. Let it draw out.
Let it draw, yeah. And also, you see, sometimes I've noticed that, say, I turn off the camera and it's at the end, and then it's fucking total. The conversation then after sometimes is exactly what you're looking for.
When they feel more relaxed.
Well, even for me, it's not like I'm totally 100% relaxed about the idea of a conversation being recorded.
Yeah.
With a camera, but so what I'm saying is that somehow then when you say you turn the camera off, it's that sometimes people go, all right, or some sort of energy thing to go, right, so that's off, so now we can just go back to chatting about fucking shit and not caring.
Yeah.
That's it's
so the performance is over.
Yeah.
That's pretense.
That's pretense. I think it's kind of normal, but it's an interesting way I think about it.
But even that word though, pre-tense. You know, they actually are currently tense.
They what? Currently tense, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, just tense, yeah.
That'll do.
Yeah. It's interesting. Is it interesting? Just for this form, this idea of a podcast, of a conversation, trying to... You can't really try. It just goes the way it's going to go. And that's the premise of it.
Really. Well, in fairness, that you've never suggested in any dialogue that we had that your podcasts were looking for anything different.
No.
You know, that there's a dialogue to happen in whatever organic form it takes.
Yeah.
So it's not an interview, it's a chat.
It's an attempt, yeah. Or a conversation, yeah, recorded. Which is an interesting thing to try. I mean, the original idea of it was fucking this idea. A conversation recorded and not knowing what way it's going to go or what road it will take, or so I never give myself. I was tempted to read up a little bit about your clinic, which I did for a few minutes, and I have read before, but about your history and about stuff like that, and then I'm kind of going, no, that's just, trying to but I do that to sometimes I've absolutely done research, but it's very rare. I like that jumping in, even if it's uncomfortable, because then we can see what way it fucking goes like.
But I mean, isn't that the art of conversation, and using the word art very deliberately, whereby it can be organic and can flow, where we find that a lot of conversations these days are contrived or loaded with a pretense or with an objective.
Yeah.
What can't the conversation just be what it needs to become?
Yeah. And it can be always fresh because of that, because then you have two people somehow coming together with that in mind.
Yeah.
And here we are. Yeah.
So I hope you have questions now.
Oh, that's the thing, you see. I have one question. Well, I have two questions actually. Totally different ones. And it's a question of which one I'm going to ask you. That's what I'm interested in. One is a kind of to get a bit about your history, and then the other one is something that you posted on Facebook at Christmas time.
Oh yeah.
So it was a nice mix there.
I don't remember what I posted on Facebook at Christmas time.
Well, what you mentioned, the word is.
Ah, yeah.
And gratitude, or something along those lines, but it was very specifically around the word is.
Is, yeah.
And so, well, obviously we're going down that road then.
Okay. Either or both.
Well, yeah. Well, maybe we'll go back. I think it's no harm going back because I think it's interesting. And I mean, I know a little bit about you.
Yes.
So maybe, I suppose the Japanese culture, that's where I have to ask it.
Sure.
There's absolute love of Japanese culture. And I'm curious how a man from Dublin ended up falling in love with such a culture.
Right. It started off not understanding what culture I was falling in love with.
Yeah.
Because as a child I would collect the papers off crayons because it had Chinese writing on the side of it. I was mystified by the Far East because it was far, it was out of touch, it was mysterious. But I was mystified by any mystery. I always wanted to know what was the unknown and the curious. And at this stage, I wasn't able to differentiate between Japanese, Chinese, Malaysian, and so on. But then all of a sudden, David Carradine makes his way onto my screen in this episode of Kung Fu. And then I realised there's this type of activity that I'd heard about elusively, wasn't aware that it was an available thing. He's clearly not Asian, at least from the point of view of full-blood Asian, yet he's doing this thing. So all of a sudden this idea was born, but the idea of doing karate. So from an age, it must be in very low single figures, like, I mean, as early as 4 and 5, I'm starting to go around the place air kicking and doing the equivalent of playing the air guitar.
Yeah. Okay, very good, yeah.
Later on, I eventually got to join a karate club. But prior to that, I was a gymnast and I was a runner and various other things. Enjoyed all of them. Still, that desire was there for this Far East. At the same time, as kids do, you're studying other things that are mystical, whether it's the story parameters or you're studying a couple of card tricks. Because there's something special about having something that's mysterious. Maybe at that age when you're looking to find your identity, maybe you think it's adding to your identity or it's part of your exploration. But one way or the other, it eventually ended up in a dojo. And the first dojo wasn't the right one. He was a good guy. I still know this man today.
Yeah.
The second dojo, he was the best man for me.
Dojo is...
dojo is what we would have referred to as our karate hall.
Okay.
And the second one was actually not Japanese. In fact, it was originally a Chinese martial art that was taken by a big Hawaiian guy and turned into a practical street fighting art. Very disciplined, very structured, beautiful history as far back as this man. The man was Ed Parker, this style was Kenpo. And my daughters do that now. And they're under an instructor that's around a long time and has that tradition and legacy, because tradition and legacy, it seems to me, is something that's dwindling about the place these days.
Yeah.
But from that point on, that gave me a tangible route to ask a question or to engage a person on the subject of the martial arts karate. Now, karate is Japanese, even though Kenpo karate was a Chinese variation. I should say an Americanized version of a Chinese art.
Okay.
But anyhow, that began it. And then from that point, because there was maybe a pre-affection, I then started to notice things that were Japanese. Simple things like the cherry blossom in my dad's garden. You know, I was starting to manufacture weapons myself as a child, so that when other guys and girls were running around playing cops and robbers, I was the gobshite with a sock on my head being the ninja. You know, and this was how it went. And it just became what it became, to the point that I had a black belt early. I used to help my instructor, and I used to love this, run his class while I was still studying, you know, for at that stage was the intermediate certificate. You know, so he'd go on holidays, leave me in charge of a school, and this responsibility came as a reward for the dedication to the art. So this was a benevolent experience all the way through. So all the way through, I had a reward for commitment. And that never stopped giving, till eventually I ended up in Japan and realised that culture rewards all the time.
Okay.
And it seemed to sit with the idea that I had that a discipline and a consistent approach to something will yield a result. So it just sat into to some extent, I think the hierarchical term of obsessive compulsive disorder can mean very severe issues in some instances. I certainly have a compulsion for order, but I mockingly call it OCO, not OCD.
Right.
Because for me, it's not a disorder, it's an order. So I have an obsessive compulsive order to keep things in a form that I can extrapolate and exploit the best of a situation.
Yeah, okay.
And the Japanese do this.
Sorry, yeah. That's funny.
It's
No,
OCO, right?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think I must be...
You're either D or O.
No, I'm the CO, the chaos one. With a certain amount of order, I'm sure there has to be, but there's a lot of chaos.
Well, there's a curious thing, and that is in having an element of order, a predictable base to come from, it essentially facilitates stepping out into a chaotic environment, enjoying it thoroughly, because to some extent you've got an anchor or a tether back to something that, you know, gives you the security to go out there and play, which is another concept that the Japanese grandmaster that I would have visited under a different martial arts style would always talk about. And what he would say was, okay, understand play. And people would kind of go, okay, do you understand? Now go and play. It wasn't what he meant, ever. And it was actually a fellow in the UK that put me onto this, because I didn't work that out for myself. I only heard, okay, understand play. What he meant was okay, understand play.
Okay, yeah.
And that was, okay, so now what I got to do is learn to play inside of that organised structure. So now that you understand organised structure, now put some chaos in there. So in other words, learn form to become formless. And again, that spoke to me. Not necessarily a Japanese thing, but I learned that in Japan.
And I'm going linear, but you... when you met, that wasn't in Ireland when you met these guys, this guy you're talking about there.
From England.
Yeah, that was from England, was it?
I met him first in Ireland.
Okay.
But the conversations I had with him were more when I started to go and see him in the UK in small batches. And then as our relationship developed, we ended up with more one-on-one conversations. And he's a very benevolent man. He's very generous with his knowledge if he feels that you deserve it. He doesn't give away stuff for free, and I don't mean money. He'll give away things as compliments to the lesson that you've learned.
Okay.
To some extent, that's a Japanese principle as well. You earn it, you know. But Dennis is the gentleman's name, Dennis Bartram. He would share his lessons that way. He could give you a class of lessons, but subject to your understanding of that class will predetermine what you're going to get told next. And he still teaches today, and we still teach in one form together, in other forms separately, but we're part of the same organisation, which is this Amatsu group, which has now become Amatsu Orthopathic Therapy.
Yeah.
And that, of course, is the other part of my life, which essentially is the occupational side of it, which is heavily Japanese influence, because it is a Japanese therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in that, so you ended up, though, I suppose in particular, you obviously went to study in Japan to learn some martial art elements, or yeah.
So the majority of my martial arts study was conducted here in Ireland under a guy called George Mon. Now, George is a fabulous man. Okay. He's perceived differently by people in the Kempo circles for different reasons. But the fact is, he gave us a phenomenal schooling in the discipline and just in general discipline. So a simple thing, we would have come through with a competence, but also a confidence, within balance. Never an arrogance about our skill sets in any shape, way or form. Set me up beautifully to go into the Japanese martial art that at entry level, in many ways, I don't rate. A lot of the guys who practice that art actually can't fight. It's a martial art, and that part seems to be missed. So in actual fact, what you've got is a theatre company. Now, there are guys within that martial art, I must be clear upon this, that are fabulous and very capable of fighting, if you will, although nobody ever wants to fight. The fact is, the capability is there. But what I'm advocating is that this schooling and grounding came initially from George, and then came through then and transcended that particular time and space. And
do you think that that sort of ethos and of the martial arts appealed to that part of you that you mentioned about order? Yeah. That it was a kind of an attractive way for order, in a way.
It was. It gave you something tangible, specific to do, even from a habitual perspective, 3 times a week. Yeah. I liked it because there was a security in it, as you basically had your schooling that was predictable, your karate, which was predictable, and then the rest of it was just out there organically going through the various different types of chaoses and devilment that a young fella does. But because again I had my firm anchors, I felt very confident to go out there and waste time. It was never wasted. It was exploration, but it wasn't necessarily productive in a measurable way, but it was very productive in a formative way. But it allowed me a balance, a sense of balance, as in, I've got that, so now I can go over there and be a gobshite.
Yeah, okay. And then taking it forward a little bit to, obviously your curiosity, I mean, would you say your curiosity just kept wanting to be fed a little bit.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
I mean,
that,
it's
like,
insatiable.
that's how it ended up. Is that why you ended up going to talking to these guys in Japan?
So I went to Japan with an instructor that I was training under here in Ireland first.
Mm-hmm.
I went over there to see this grandmaster that I'd heard about.
Mm-hmm.
And like that, there was various different people in that troupe. Some that I would have recognised as being very good at what they do, at what they had been doing martially.
Yeah.
Others not so much. Not denoted necessarily by their grade or rank.
Mm-hmm.
So when going to Japan, I got to see what the Japanese perspective was on efficiency and in the application of this particular martial art.
Okay.
And again, you're looking at a patriarchal, historical legacy approach to the system. Now, even though that was the case, this particular guy, Masaka Hatsumi, was still a practitioner of ninjutsu, which meant he was a rule breaker. So he had beautiful form, beautiful technique, but anybody looking at him wouldn't recognise that because he had let it become something different.
Okay.
He was now the improvised musician, classically trained, but now he's playing improvised jazz.
Okay.
So for maybe a person that didn't understand, he looked disorganised, he looked clumsy, but yet he was remarkably efficient. His timing was perfect. His distance control was perfect. So you're exposed to this level that's outside of your current capability because you don't have enough time wax on, wax offing. But eventually when you get to the level of proficiency whereby you have, we'll say, now this of course is a perceptual statement, but a master control of it, then you get to inject the chaos in again.
Okay.
So it's
that's
form
your
to conformance.
play. That's your play element. Then again. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, understand play.
Yeah. Okay. I suppose I have a kind of a thing in mind or a moment in mind which we talked about, and I'm interested in when you were learning this. There is a lot more to it. It's not obviously there's an awful lot of the flow element to it that you can't understand intellectually. You have to be in the movement of it.
Sure.
To know. This just the movement. You have to be in the movement of it to experience it, and then you can maybe describe the experience of it. But you described to me a moment where you were kind of pushing against this guy who was teaching you, or he was trying to, and it was a kind of a distinct moment in your your learning process where you kind of went, okay,
right, yeah. This was on my first trip, and we had gone to see one of the Shihans, which one of the senior grades in Japan. And at that point in time, he said basically throw a punch. Now, to maybe give this some kind of context, I had come through the Kempo. We'd got into competitions, and to use my instructor's terms, we'd cleaned the floor. We were exceptionally good, exceptionally fit, exceptionally well trained. My instructor, by the way, was ex-army, so we had that type of approach to the training.
Yeah.
We could do everything on both sides, and we could do it with some significant efficiency, not only in the perception of technique, but also actually in the power that was within that technique. So I went to Japan as a young man with all the arrogance that comes with being a young man. Even though we were relatively humble, they're still in, I'm going to Japan, I'm really good at what I do. I might even show these guys what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And there might be a compliment somewhere that make me feel even better. Yeah. But the truth of it is, I was fit, fast, strong, from a visual perspective in great shape, and a little Japanese old man, smaller than I, throw the punch, and he said it in Japanese, when I tell you to throw a punch, you throw a punch. It's not up to you to stop, it's up to me to get out of the way. So I threw the second punch, and I was convinced I hit him. My next conscious thought, I was travelling along the floor about the height of the arms of the chair, more or less horizontal. Now usually you would engage a roll to ride out of that. I couldn't roll because he had organised me in such a way that I was going to fall flat. But as I was falling, he just brushed off the Achilles tendon at the back of my heel, which made my body feel like I had elongated a couple of inches, and I fell down to the floor flat and was completely winded. Now, at that stage, our training was so involved in conditioning orientated work as well as functional work that we could take Wavin pipes essentially filled with sand, wrapped in a PVC, and you'd be slapped with these things while you were hanging upside down from an inversion bar. Like, it sounds ridiculous, but this was this school of thought for conditioning. I was winded, foreign feeling at this stage of my life. He came up, took me by the little finger, put his fingernail under mine, bent the finger, which bent the wrist, which bent the elbow, kneeled on my rib cage, And as I exhaled, he would bend it a little bit more, and kneel in a little bit more, and was slowly strangling me. Now, I cut back to my observations of this the day before. I'm looking at this guy thinking, people are just cooperating here in Japan, even with the Grandmaster, even with the she hands. I'm thinking, this is not good. I came all this way, it was very expensive. What am I doing here looking at this?
Yeah.
Pony and trap show, this is not it. Now, I realised while lying on the floor, having my finger bent and the knee into my ribs, that actually nobody was cooperating. They didn't have any choice. This man understood timing and distance and the space that I needed to be in to be fit, fast and strong, and the space he needed to be in to mean that from his perspective it didn't matter, because he took everything that I had away and kept all of his. And that's when I learned that's a master, and I'm very much a student, no matter how good I thought I was. And at that stage I was considered to be somewhat of an expert on other people's perspectives, but that was the turnaround, and that was the beginning of a new series of learning, one that made me realise you're learning for life, kiddo. And that was a lovely, humbling experience.
Well, that's dramatic. I mean, you that's the stuff that you see in martial art movies. You know, that's the stuff that you see in those sorts of scenarios where the young guy, he knows his shit, he's coming over, and no matter how grounded, whatever, he still thinks, I'm going to take it. Straight out of the movie, But obviously it struck a chord, and remains to strike a chord, that he didn't use force.
No, he didn't need to.
And
this is an interesting thing. This is a very capable man that's capable of eliciting a huge amount of devastating damage on a person's body. But of course, given his understanding of the things that I told you about, he doesn't have to. You fall over on yourself. He's taking away your capacity to remain upright by taking away your perception of where you are in space and time, by being somewhere different than you think he is. So you overextend, he just helps you overextend a little bit further, and for all intents and purposes, you fall over. Now, whether you fall over onto his knee or whether he accelerates that fall is entirely his choice. And that's just two things of the myriad of things that he could do.
And do you think that it's that he thinks you're predictable and can spot it, that he can move so fast, or take the magic out of it in a way for me and break it down? How can somebody do something like that to you?
So, for instance, if we liken this, a child is unpredictable, but when they run at you, and I'll use mess fighting because we're talking martial art, there's no threat there, because your physical prowess over that child is of such that you can grab the arm even though you don't know which arm's going to get thrown, because you've got that much understanding of your own timing and distance, because you're in a 40-year-old body or a 50-year-old body, that you can see the shoulder coming up to throw around. So you will just engage that and grab it, and you'll tickle them and you'll turn them, and you know you've got control over their inexperienced body. So independent of how experienced I thought I was, comparative to his studies, I was inexperienced. So what you had was a pair of experienced eyes that, although I was operating in an unpredictable way, he had enough time, because of his understanding of where he needed to be, to read what I was doing. So that's what he was doing. So let's go back to music in that regard. You know, with the improvisation of jazz, if you've got a couple of guys coming together for the first time, well, everybody just adds their bit in with an understanding as to what the general idea is going to be, but they put their bit in their own way, because they can read the music. He read me. Does that help you understand that?
No, it totally does. I mean, it breaks it down. It takes the kind of...
There's no magic. There never is. There's only perception of what these guys are doing. Plenty of people want to mystify them. They don't deserve to be mystified. They deserve to be respected for the time and the commitment that they put in to get to that level.
Because you see the likes of... I mean, I see videos online of these guys who... Like you're describing when you saw him in action the day before, there you're looking at these martial arts and the guy is just kind of going, or whatever, and they, to me, where there's no contact even, it looks like he's using some sort of chi or force to push the person away, and it, to me,
that's bullshit though.
That is bullshit.
Like, I mean, there's no doubt about it that we all have some type of electric magnetic resonance that emanates from our body that can be measured in some way. But you ain't going to throw somebody across a room with it. You know, and there's plenty of examples of these guys on the internet who have made these claims, whose students will jump away from them, akin to what you see at the evangelist ceremonies, you know, where people are speaking in tongues and wobbling on the floor because somebody has exorcised the demons from their head. So this situation is played out in any number of environments, including martial arts. Now take the martial art minister and put him in against somebody that might be a cage fighter, and every time martial art minister goes home with his backside in a sling. You know, it's not it.
Okay, that's very good. What I was going to say to you was, so obviously within the both the, let's say, the play of it, but also obviously in your work, then you I'm going to use the only way I can talk about what you Amatsu, but you it's basically there is a way for the body to be held. This is having gone to a few of your obviously a few of your sessions, and you've worked on me. But so what I've understood is that there is a way for the body to naturally be held or hold itself. And the body then over long periods of time learns, whether it's sitting at a school desk, sitting at an office, on a computer, reading a book, reading a paper, whatever the fuck, it has learned a way that doesn't necessarily suit its natural state, and so then muscles have to compensate, everything has to compensate for the body to work normally, and then what happens is over prolonged
to work, not normally.
For the body to work, And let's see, is there a question at the end of this spiel? Hopefully there is. But basically, back pain and neck pain and shoulder pain and all of those are results of some sort of, it's not, positioning or whatever that has happened over a prolonged period of time, and you've kind of described pain as is the last resort for the body compensating for all these bad positions. I'm not going to get you to correct my language necessarily, but obviously that's this study of the body and this discussion, this Amatsu is holistically different than, again, we'll say physiotherapy or whatever the fuck in terms of fixing prolonged problems of the body. So obviously back pain, people suffer from it. It's a fucking thing. We live in a world where back pain is I don't know, was it always the case? But it definitely is a serious thing for people to have to deal with on a daily basis.
Okay.
So what is the question is, in your studies, in your work, what do you see as the cause of body pain? What's the main cause of body pain?
So
is that the question?
Yeah, and it's not too difficult to answer this. Anthropologically, we have evolved to function in a particular way. You have a series of joints all the way through your body and soft tissue hanging over that predictably moves the bone structure through a series of movements that's specific to the angles and positions that the joints are anthropologically designed to be. And that's based upon evolution. Now, cut a long story short, the neutral position that you're supposed to be in, this homeostatic position, which is where you are in poise or in perfect balance, is essentially where you are standing with the minimum engagement of muscle tissues. Now, of course, this is going to be a reductive answer, and there's tangents that I can go off in each one for much, much longer, but to keep it encapsulated, if a person is simply standing with poor poise because they've now ended up outside of their anthropological developed position, in other words, they're no longer running around the field throwing a spear at a rabbit or something more significant with both hands with efficiency, they're no longer climbing trees with all limbs with efficiency, and no longer foraging where they're bending down and picking stuff up and moving around in a natural way. Now they're stuck behind the desk for very prolonged periods of time, from the time that they're 4 years of age, and in a lot of people's cases all the way through their life. And if they're not behind a desk, they're possibly behind a steering wheel or some other compromise to this shape that's designed to move. Your body is designed for perpetual motion, and even when you're stopped, you're still in motion. Okay. Now, if the position that you're in for motion is uneconomic, Then you've got a ratio issue. And the ratio issue is that your rate of healing, which is proportionate to how you have looked after your health, proportionate to your age, certain environmental factors, but your proportionate of regeneration is supposed to supersede the rate that you degenerate. If it doesn't, you've got pain that you can't get rid of.
Okay.
Now, the problem you've got is that for most people, the degenerative ratio is elevated by being harboured in a particular position for prolonged periods of time that your body reads as a fall. This is the easy way to describe this. And if you're falling over, something has got to grip you and hold you and stop you from falling. So in our case, we don't have guy ropes, we got muscle tissues. And the body neurologically will engage the muscle tissues and the fascial continuum that runs through the body. We won't get any more technical than that. But what I want to say is that all of the body, all of the time, is aware of what every other part of the body is doing. So if your shoulders are forward, all of your body will make a compensation to try to lessen the effect of your shoulders being forward on the rest of your body. After a while, that gets too tiring. You will look for another way of doing another adaptation. And you will keep looking for adaptations to allow you to continue this sustained challenged position.
Okay.
Till eventually you run out of options. Now you've got pain and nowhere to go. You would have had elements of pain all the way, but when you run out of options, it's just pain and you can't seem to get better because right there, the slider for regeneration has dropped below degeneration and you're sustaining dysfunction.
Right.
Now what I do is come along and help reverse that. That's the crux of it.
Okay. Yeah. It's very well put.
Good.
Yeah. Well, you see, it's fucking this mechanism, this bones and skin and everything like that is beyond complex.
Oh, it's beyond complex but beautifully simple. And as paradox as my statement is, the complexity comes when you look at things in isolation. And you can explore any part of the body to infinitum. But when you do that, and I've done a lot of study in the body, you then have to realise, something I said a minute ago, that every single part of that body is completely aware of what every other single part of that body is doing at all times. So no matter how specialist you become, you have to be aware that if you're going to address something in the body, you have to address the whole thing.
Okay. Yeah.
Because a condition, an ailment or disease will leave signatures in the rest of the system. So if you only address the symptom, let's say, well then the signatures that are there can make it easier for a person to drift back into the pathology and behaviour that caused them to visit you in the first place for help.
Okay. So tell me about this. Or would you? To what extent does stress, not physical stress, but actual mental stress?
Okay. So
what's your sense of what that does to the fucking?
Because they're going to cross over, what we'll do is we'll call psychological stress, and we'll call physiological stress distress.
Okay. Yeah.
So what you've got is a situation whereby the body will always reflect how the mind is feeling, and the pretty much the mind will also have a reflection of what the body is feeling. Now, what I'm talking about there is, to put it another way, psychology always has physiology, and physiology always has psychology. Now, let's give some examples.
Does the body rule the mind, or does the mind rule the body?
I don't separate them.
Yeah, okay. No, it's just go on here.
Yeah, but it is a question people asked. And the thing about it is that as you study each one in isolation, you could suggest that one but when you study both, you realise that they're part of the same continuum. Now, the thing about it is that we've a situation, and again, let's be reductive for simplicity. If essentially you see a person and how do you think they're feeling? Probably not brilliant, because this is the physiology that tends to be associated with feeling down, dour, depressed, maybe even anxious with a slight change.
Though, potentially.
They might be pursuing safety, but this position doesn't guarantee safe. That might be their pursuit though. They might feel more protected here. But the reality is that if a person has to visit this position to feel protected, they're not feeling protected.
Okay.
Yeah? Now, compare this person that has this physiology to this person. It's a completely different dialogue. And that person's feeling a whole lot different. So now, let's take a person that has got a neutral position and somebody important to them has just passed away. They will drop the head. If they stay like this for a period of time, and that period of time can be measured in a couple of days or a couple of weeks, they will end up with a sore neck and a sore back because their head has gone forward, it's heavy, and it's a burden to the body. So the psychology of the death created the physiology in the body. And depending on how long you leave that there will determine as to what other parts of the body that affects. But know that it affects all of the body straight away, but whether it has ramifications that manifest in pathology or something you can feel will be subjective to how long it's there. Now, let's go the other way. A person hasn't had any kind of death or any kind of negative impact on their psychology or any type of stress. They don't even have stress in the workplace, but they're out playing a game of hurley, for instance. They get a clatter on the back of the head, and that throws the neck forward and gives them a little bit of whiplash. They don't get that addressed properly. You leave them in this position or some form of that position, and that can induce a chemical reaction in the body that can create symptoms of stress, depression, anxiety, and because of the structural implications of having bones in your head that should do a certain job, not doing the job. It has an effect on the endocrine system, which is the hormonal system, which then can create a depressive scenario. Maybe the easiest one to talk about is if a lady delivers a baby, the pelvis doesn't knit back together properly, you end up with a challenge to the sacroiliac, which is literally the end of the spine and in the middle of the pelvis. If there's a challenge to that, there will be an orthopedic reference to a challenge in this zone here. So postnatal depression can be a direct, pretty much correlation to the sacrum, a pelvic level being locked, that will lead to a pelvic occipital lock at the other end. The occiput is the bone at the back of the head.
Okay.
So let me just put that into one sentence. Lock the pelvis up, lock the head up, postnatal depression will follow. Leave postnatal depression there long enough, it starts to become a behaviour, and then you can start to categorise it as a clinical depression. But you can unlock a pelvis fairly quickly, provided there's no major structural issues that are beyond just the delivery. But you bring the pelvis back into its dynamic form, these bones and the affiliated things, so there's a lot more going on than I'm just saying, and then the postnatal depression lifts. So there's an example of a physiology causing a psychology.
Yeah, do you think, you see, even in that instance there, say a depression...
Depression or postnatal depression?
Postnatal depression,
Okay.
in that scenario there, which is great for two blokes to be talking about, but postnatal depression, that it's in that scenario, you see, then say that happens, that nearly keeps itself going, does it then, because the person feels bad about being depressed. On top of feeling depressed, then there's the whole struggle of not wanting the depression to be there.
Yeah.
Do you know? And feeling bad about that.
That would have been referenced slightly when I was talking about how long it's there.
Yeah.
If you have a person that has been, like I said, induced into a depression because of a chemical imbalance, they're feeling a little bit down, and then of course there might be bonding issues with babies. So we're looking at a lot of hypotheticals here.
Yeah.
Just because somebody has a person diminished by postnatal depression doesn't mean they don't have a bonding issue with the baby. Let's just look at a scenario.
Yeah.
So postnatal depression manifests because the pelvis is distorted, occiput, etc. That link. Now there might be a bonding issue with the baby. Guilt manifests. You let that continue to go, and the person will end up with this cycle, which then becomes what I would consider to be a clinical depressive cycle. But I'm saying that postnatal depression, at its core, is typically and most often as a consequence of this hormonal imbalance to do with these structural issues.
Okay.
If a person has a predisposition to depression, just because they had a baby, you don't necessarily just call that postnatal.
Yeah.
They have depression postnatally, but postnatal depression is typically and more often a structural abnormality that manifests in a psychological behaviour.
Yeah.
Now, I've talked to some exceptionally senior, actually a midwife advisor on this, and multiple other people in the mental health care profession about it. And it's not something that's largely understood. They deal with it from a mental health perspective. They don't understand that there can actually be a physiological mechanism that stops the person from getting better. But we have hundreds of test cases of women that have postnatal depression, that when essentially their pelvis was addressed, the depression lifts.
But that's really interesting. Do you, because is somebody going to seek you out when they've got postnatal depression?
No.
They won't. Surely.
But this is because people who are in my clinic, who knows somebody that has postnatal depression, who might have heard about what I've done, will send them in. But of course, you remember, I don't advertise. I exclusively operate off a referral system. Now, we're at a stage because we've got the recognition that we want. So the Amatsu therapist is not even what I would refer to myself as anymore, because we got governmental recognition as Amatsu orthopaths, which is a very specific syllabus that takes in far more than the original Amatsu syllabus was. So we now distinguish ourselves at that level. But because we're training people to do this, we now have an obligation to tell people that we exist, because they need to fill out their practices. My practice has been busy for years on referral only. So will they seek me out? They will if they're told about me, and they will come and they'll have a result. But the reality is they will seek my trainees out in the future.
They would normally perhaps associate what you do with the physical as opposed to the mental. Do you know what I mean by that?
I do. Now, more
now that's
often,
me saying that.
that's a fair point.
Yeah.
And in fairness, I don't purport to be in any shape, way or form a mental health worker, and that's not something that I ever want to be misinterpreted.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that there is an effect on that, and we have had people come for that reason that have had their symptoms lifted. Now, in the context that a person comes to me for that specific issue, I will also be telling them that they must talk to a counsellor to see if there's any issues harbouring, because, like I say, there's no separation. Yeah. They've got to cater for everything that might have contributed to that. Some of them do go, some of them don't go. Some of them have their treatments and say, well, I actually feel fine. You still should talk to somebody. I know I feel fine. I can't, of course, force them. But there's an exceptionally definitive instruction that you do need to go and see somebody that is operating in the mental health division.
Does that come up? Do you get people in and men in, and you can spot that sort of stuff? And
you can spot the shape.
You can spot the shape.
It doesn't necessarily mean that it's manifested chemically at that point. But there's no possibility that a person that's living with pain isn't being affected anyway. Doesn't mean they're depressed.
Yeah. Okay.
They might not be happy, but they don't have to enter into that realm or those categories or subcategories of depression.
Yeah.
Now, just because, this is obvious, I would think, just because the person is diminished by pain doesn't necessarily mean they're depressed. Now, no, that wasn't suggested, but it's also important that, you know, where people hear sentiments and statements like I've just made, they tend to take them then as being always rules. There's no such thing as an always rule in a person's body. Every single person, even that falls under the same diagnosed category, and a diagnosis could come from a neurosurgeon or an orthopedic surgeon or a GP, they will have idiosyncratic, individualistic characteristics affiliated with their symptoms, with their actual ailment. Naming something doesn't necessarily mean that you've actually encapsulated it.
Yeah, well, it's very. I mean, my perception of, say, something like depression or whatever, it has humongous dark connotations. It is perhaps talked about in, let's just say, mental health circles, but not really talked about in the day-to-day world. I don't think it is. I mean, it depends, obviously. I'm
more now than before. But
more now than before.
It was a dark secret in the past.
Well, I always kind of think it's funny in the sense that, you know, somebody has a broken leg, cut in their hands, or whatever the fuck, they'll absolutely have no problem going, and especially dudes will go, jeez, they're not feeling well at all. If they've got the flu, they will say, jeez, you know, and in particular, we have no problem feeling sorry for ourselves, let's just say.
Yeah.
But if something like that's coming up, then that's not talked about. I think. I am...
I'm thinking how it was for years. I mean,
it's seen as weak. That's what I'm
But it's
saying.
also, remember, seen as weak, and let that go out, rather than just be the person's weak. It can cast a dispersion on the family in old-fashioned thinking.
Yes, yeah.
You know, what's wrong with them?
Yeah.
You know, why are they depressed? What's this? What's that? I mean, Maura's taken to the bed. You know.
Jesus, yeah. That's yeah.
And that's how it is. Yeah. I mean, that's old dark Catholic Ireland. Guilt and inadequacy, and you know, don't tell the neighbours, they might think that such and such has happened.
Yeah.
And the thing about it was, in many houses in Ireland, there was something bloody happening. You know, that they didn't want to think that was the consequence of it.
Yeah. How could anybody be affected by it? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. I think it's interesting, that idea that how, like you're saying, you know, Mary's taken to the bed, there's something fucking wrong with her, and then she's never almost seen as that.
Yeah.
Then, you know,
she's never anything other.
Yeah, even if that was a few months.
Yeah.
It's always.
All right, Mary.
Yeah.
Sure, I love you. Yeah. So they can feel good about
It's
themselves.
fucking awful. Yeah, that's it. Like it's almost. The drunkest. It's almost like the same as them being in Ireland anyway. I'm not the drunkest in the room.
Yeah.
So whilst I might have bad days, I'm not like Mary. Mary's taken to the bed. I'm not like Johnny. Johnny's had 20 pints and he's not walking straight. Yeah. So I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm okay anyway. I think it's fucking. Yeah, that's the thing. All right. Yeah. But for a lot of what you do then is for work. That is. Is let me see what rewire the body, reshape the body, help the body reshape itself back.
The body does return to a more efficient position, which does change the visual shape, the functional shape. For that to happen, all of the body has got to become complicitly aware, which means that the nervous system is involved, cannot be involved.
Yeah.
But so too is the fascial matrix, the bone structure, all of the connective tissues, which includes the fascia, that's ligaments and tendons as well. The musculature is very important because it's receiving the signals from the nervous system. So let's boil this down to a simpler thing, right? And then you got this bone structure. That doesn't move by itself. If you want to move it, a muscle has got to move it. Okay. If you've got a muscle that's too tight, it's because the nerve supply to that muscle is telling it to be tight. If you have a muscle that's too loose or incapable of engaging, it's because the nerve supply isn't telling it. Now, there's a myriad of reasons for those two things.
Okay.
But there's no point in going along and bending a bone back in or beating up a muscle if the neural supply is going to continue to tell that muscle to either over-engage or under-engage. So subsequently what has to happen is you've got to address not only the neural supply, but then the capacity for the muscle to actually heal itself once the nerve supply has been switched on or off in conjunction with what it needs. So yes, to a degree you're rewiring the body, but you're also trying to flush it out of the harboured toxins that exist within the muscles, whether that's lactic acid, overcalcification, and the other things that can exist in those muscular and fascial sacs. But the bottom line is that when you're finished doing a balance, which is what we often refer to as the treatment, the body has now got accessibility to a position that at the very least is not degenerating you at the same level.
Okay.
So straight away your rate of recovery comes up. And remember, people say, I'm just not getting better, my back is sore 18 months. Well, then you're using it wrong, because your body's getting better every day, just might not be getting better faster than you're degenerating it. Because the body is the one that does the healing. I don't. I just help you to create the shape and the physical poise that reduces your liability so much that your body's natural ability can actually come in and do its job. That's all we're doing, really. And in fairness, no matter who's treating you, and no matter what their competence is, that's all they're doing, is trying to give your body back the ability to do its job.
Okay. Yeah. So I've had 5 sessions. In 4 weeks' time I'm going to have my 6th. And normally now I'd be the type who would I'd do 3 sessions with, say I had an osteopath in the past.
Yeah.
Like I've had prolonged back problems over fucking 15 years maybe. One way or another I'd have a relapse of some description.
Yeah.
And so then, of recent years I found a way to get 6 to 9 months. So what we are now we're in the thick of it, I suppose. But I'm curious about this. Like at the moment, I'm totally pain free.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to maintain that. And yeah. So, but obviously, I don't want to keep coming to Sean forever. And so, is there a kind of for say somebody with back problems watching this?
Yes.
And they're from multiple different places across the stratosphere. Is there little things that somebody who's experiencing back problems, and it's been on and on and on and on for years, is there any tiny thing that they can do if they can't travel from Australia to the clinic?
So fundamentally, we gave an overview earlier on as to what we're talking about doing here, which is putting a body into its most economic position.
Yeah.
The one that it functions at its optimum. There are various treatment systems that purport to do that. You've had some of them.
Yeah.
And the problem is that they don't necessarily do that. They do that to the best of their understanding. Therein lies this discrepancy. Equally so, there's these wonderful, I'm going to call them exercise systems, that purport to help with postures. And they put a different emphasis on different things. Like for a while it was all about the psoas muscle, then it become about activating the glutes. There's beautiful yoga transitions, and there's amazing Pilates classes, and then there's various other activities, Alexander technique, Feldenkrais. They're superb in their own right. Problem basically you've got in this scenario is that if the person going to that activity, any one of them, is deviated in their structure, what they're doing is making themselves more efficient in that dysfunction. Okay, so they're improving their fitness, improving their ability, they're improving a lot of things. But if they still have this hierarchical deviation in their structure, at the best, they're just improving themselves in that twist.
So that's like last year, I was as fit as I possibly could have been, as muscular as I had been my whole life, let's just say. Still fucking pulled it back in some way, shape or form during that period of time. And it was a during a nothing during a nothing thing. It wasn't during exercise.
It's the proverbial straw on the camel's back. Your body has an alert system that's probably worth mentioning. Maybe we should mention that now that you brought it up. Okay. So you find yourself, for instance, and we'll use running as an exercise form. Yeah. So you start to run, but you're running in a slightly deviated position. What happens is your body is working in a bias from the point of view that you might be slightly more right or slightly more left, but you're running slightly off kilter. The proportion of use in the body is disproportionate to a degree that one knee will take more abuse, part of your back will take more abuse, one shoulder will be slightly further forward, and it can create all sorts of pathological changes up to your system. You will continue to move around inside your running technique to try to find the best place, but eventually you will run out because you will have effectively burdened all of the different configurations that are available.
Okay.
And now all of a sudden you're in your kitchen and you're just bending down to pick up the spud that fell off the actual counter, and bang, your back goes. Does anybody really think that a spine that's been anthropologically developed for tens of thousands of years, and in some cases millions of years, because you track it back even to what we had crawling out of the ocean, that spine has been designed to sustain us for our lifetime. Your lifetime, depending on who you ask, is roughly 7 times your age when you reach sexual maturity. Not mental maturity, sexual maturity, different thing.
Okay.
But the point I'm making is that's the longevity potential, right? So
just okay.
How long have you left?
I have a bit left. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
But the problem is that it goes when you pick up the spud, or when you sneeze, when you open the coffee jar, when you get out of the car, or all the things you hear about people putting that back out. That'll do you, will it? Is that enough?
That's fucking loads. Yeah, that's loads. Yeah. In my sleep. Thanks very much.
Yeah. Downstairs, so nobody has to carry you.
Definitely not up here in the non-geolatic, as referred to by somebody. Robin. Sorry, I cut across.
We worked out 91.
So we worked out 91. The level of multitasking obviously is limited.
Where were we?
Presuming it was 13. So you have to kind of say to yourself, hopefully it wasn't 10 or whatever.
Indeed.
And it could have been.
I suppose where we're at is that you've got this body that's anthropologically designed to last that amount of time.
Yeah.
Okay. Now it doesn't go opening a coffee jar or bending over to pick something up. It's only going because you've now put it under a duress that your body has got nowhere else to go. So it was eventually green, then it went into this kind of yellow alert. And the yellow alert means that it's still able to function, you might even notice, but essentially you're slightly compromised. But the body is protecting you by stiffening some part of your body up that it doesn't want you to aggravate or damage further. But yet you continue to do what you're doing. You might even stretch it. And the next thing, your body goes into an amber alert. And then you've got some kind of sensation, but you go with the no pain, no gain, or sure, it'll be grand.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, you've got a straw on the camel's back, then you're into red alert. Now you've got pathology and something very tangible all the time. And that's how that happens. So the bottom line is that unless you understand that mechanism, you may very well be exercising yourself into dysfunction.
Yeah, okay.
So how does Frank get to a situation whereby he could come once every 6 months or once a year or do it himself? Well, you'd have to have a complete and absolute understanding of your body and the signs that it's giving you. You'd have to be able to interpret what way your body is actually physically standing or moving through its transitions. People spend an entire lifetime exploring that journey within yoga, and even very proficient yoga instructors will find their way into my practice because it's a beautiful objective, but it is a lifelong commitment, and there's going to be plenty of glitches along the way, particularly as you're looking to explore the parameters of your movement. You don't want to just do safe movements. If you just do safe movements, your body will plateau and go into reversibility anyway. You want to continue to propagate movement and continue to explore and play.
Yeah.
And so therefore, I'm not sure if Frank will ever get to the stage whereby you can do 6 months or not. But if you don't or not doing 6 months, you'll know why you're not doing it.
Yeah.
And if you do get the 6 months, you will know why you are doing it. And that's your journey.
Yeah.
But for the person in Australia, they need to find a therapist who is capable of actually helping them become aware of what the characteristics are that they have got that might be contributing to their legacy issues that don't seem to be going away. Because once again, let me repeat this part, your body is designed to heal. If it isn't healing, you're doing something wrong. Now, I am not referring to a person that is post a motorbike accident that has been literally pinned back together. I'm talking to the person that has had no major trauma or has had trauma that's relatively low level in the grand scheme of things that should be functioning, yet they're not. That person's not doing it right. And it doesn't matter whether they're doing Pilates. It doesn't matter if they're a yoga instructor or a Tai Chi instructor. If there's a glitch there that's not getting better, they're doing it wrong.
Okay.
And all the things I mentioned, I should clarify, beautiful, beautiful formulas. Tai Chi, Pilates, yoga, great systems. The system is not the bit that gets criticised. It's the person doing and using the system that might not be orientated to the best position to do that system.
Tai Chi is a bit is more, it's an older form. Like say Pilates is relatively new, isn't it?
It's a new name, but the system's around a long time.
Okay.
Like, you know, there's of course there's emerging sciences that help to explain it better, but fundamentally there's no new fundamentals.
Yeah. Okay.
All these principles are around a long time, and just there's new marketing strategies.
Yeah.
Everybody wants a bit of the pie.
The next new thing. Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. What was I going to say to you? So the second question was, I'd need to dig up your quote, but I remember looking at your quote. Yeah. What do you think is? What do you think this is? What do you think this is? What's happening? Apart from being a podcast, what do you think? Have you a sense of it? You said it is.
Yeah. The only thing that it could possibly be. So therefore, it is the beginning, the middle, and the end, and all those things at once, and nothing more, nothing less. And at the time when I put that up, I was sitting there with my family, exactly where I was meant to be at that moment in time. But I was also there with all the legacy of what had gone before, and with all the hope of what was to come, but it has already happened, because I could feel that beautiful association of that moment and its resonance. So I decided to put up that effectively this is and something, but what I was referring to was literally
You also said you can't have it or something like that.
the feeling that I had at the time, because there was an element of anticipation for what was to become, because we have to observe a timeline in some way. Have to, maybe not, but do nonetheless. And it was a moment where I felt very connected, and very, very secure, safe and proud, sitting there with my two girls and my wife around me, and knew that the moment that I was finding myself observing was as a consequence of the things that we had done, thought about, manifested, and maybe even rewarded ourselves with as a consequence of our commitment to different things. And it was a nice feeling.
Yeah. And but when you said that you can't have it, it was just this description that
Don't
you
remember
given.
that particular. I can look it up quite easily.
Yeah.
And get the exact sentence, because it'll put me into that moment.
Yeah.
Because I've lost that specific moment in favour of the ones that have come after in that timeline.
Well, it's not like it's essential or anything like that.
Not what you look. You've asked the question. Let's have a look and
I've
see.
asked the question anyway.
It'll be there.
I thought it was interesting.
Yeah. Because the photograph will spur something on as well.
I actually think he just had words, but
Okay.
that could be interesting. What do you think of that whiskey?
I like the whiskey.
Yeah, no, it's not just words.
Yeah, I thought it was a photograph.
Yeah, there you go.
Should be the four of us. Colosseum, I think.
Wait now. It is the Colosseum. Well, there's a couple of things you said here. That is the Colosseum one. The greatest illusion in this world is the illusion of separation.
Mm-hmm.
The greatest gift is to realise there is no gift, there just is.
Yep.
So I'm obviously curious about that. You know that. What do you mean by no separation? What's your sense of the idea of no separation?
Okay, so I talked about the body being a continuum. Every single part of the body is aware of every other single part of the body. Well, that's when you talk about a body, but then you have to realise that the body is living within an organism that is our planet, that is our universe, that is essentially the expanse of what is our understanding, and then way beyond that. And that every single part of that is aware of what every other single part is doing. So therefore, there, as that says, there is no separation. You are essentially part of, the consequence of, the result of, and the cause of everything. So therefore, there is no gift. That is it. It just is. You are part of this beautiful thing. You are the lungs of the forest. You are the biological manifestation of space dust. You are the consciousness of the planet. You are, as Rumini says, not the drop in the ocean, the entire ocean in the drop. Although that's a slightly smaller observation of the same thing, that was the point. And standing outside the Colosseum, I was aware that I was around architecture that had been there for a very long time, that had a history played out that largely was about conflict, but also about art and creation. And that all existed at that time, because of course if we look upon it, I could get a sense of that particular feeling in that space, that time. There it is. That's where the gladiator games were, but that's also where the celebrations were. That's where this was and that was. So it's still all there, and therefore it just is. It is this beautiful continuum, this beautiful interface of everything that's around us.
Yeah, okay, interesting. And within that, within that sense or that feeling, say here, right?
Where's here?
Yeah, exactly. Say what's happening.
So could be taken two ways. Say what's happening?
No, okay. I'm talking about this, right? Just the electrical aliveness of this.
Yeah.
That is ever present. That is the only. This is. It's always this.
Mm-hmm.
It's always is, or whatever that word that you use. I think it's quite nice. Robin would use the word thisnessing, and it's aliveness is also used, or beingness, or I seem to use the word this,
right,
or what's happening, or the great unknowable fact even, but just that there's something happening. Isn't it a bit mad that there is something happening?
It's the lesser known construct, and anything that's unfamiliar seems to be mad or elusive, but no, for me it's actually very comforting, because it means that there is always this phenomenal potential.
And is your sense that this potential is going somewhere, or it's just ever present, or
no, it's I don't believe that it's going anywhere, because it just is, meaning that it is perpetual insofar as it's a continuum.
Yeah.
So it's neither going somewhere or not going somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's nice. if I, like you, live a full life, and do you think about this idea of, this is apparently called life, that's the name that we have been given, so we use for reference that this is called life.
Yeah.
Being alive is called life. And there is a thing that that is referred to as death.
Yeah.
What do you think about this idea of death? How does it impact you, or do you think about it at all?
No. Well,
when I say the word death to you, what does it mean? What does it mean to you?
The first part of the question was, the only time I really thought about death was soon after having my first daughter, and I was on a plane. I went, okay, there is a possibility that something could go wrong here, and I might miss that observable period of time in my daughter's life.
Yeah.
So that was a thought about death. But that's not necessarily congruent with how I think about things in general. So pertaining to death, what do I think about death? To start with, I don't think about death. I think about, the moments that I choose to observe. And I'm not necessarily confident that I won't have a capacity to observe at any point in time. That doesn't mean I believe in an afterlife. In fact, I don't necessarily focus on the fact of the word life, because life is biological and there's a link there. So what is that? The meat sack, so to speak. So what is it that we're referring to as life? Is it the memory of that life? Or is it the actual doing of that meat sack?
Yeah.
So this is the issue. So life and death, specifically to me, is representative of the lifespan of that meat sack. So as to what happens after that meat sack expires, that is part of the great mystery. But given the fact that I do feel that we are part of this continuum, I don't fear death of the meat sack. It is what it is.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah. Yeah, that's very cool. I like your description. There is a prevalent fear, and there is an idea that, for example, some of the emails I get are phenomenal, and I got an email from somebody recently that said, "This is death. What's happening?" Or this is might as well. If you're going to call this life, you might as well call this death, because it's incomparable to anything. There is no other. There is just this.
Well, you're degenerating from the moment that you're born, in one form or another.
But in the sense that if you're going to call this something.
Oh, I see.
So death is this mucky black thing that we just don't quite get, and life is this. And so basically he was kind of saying, well, this is, now I'm projecting on his words or my understanding of what he meant by it. He was sending me a message saying, it's already death, it's already end, it's the end, it's over. But then I'll tell you why I like it. And then why I like that scenario is that obviously we inherit the words, and we navigate and talk about this happening with the words, and those the unknown have less descriptive words about them. They're the unknown, they're the dark, they're the in darkness, and there isn't a huge amount that can be said about this. But there is a thing called life, which is this, and then there's a thing called death, which is the unknown, what happens, this mind, body, spirit, whatever the fuck, when it's gone. It's called death, and there's belief in afterlife, and there's heaven, and there's fucking whatever. There's becoming nothing, or whatever.
Yeah.
So what I'm taking from his email is that forget all the concepts of what this is. This is onlyness. So say this is death. There's nowhere else to go. This is the afterlife, if you know what I mean.
All right.
It is equally, it's just a different way of describing, which the brain kind of can then go, okay, all right. Do you know what I mean by that? I'm not saying your brain, any in a discussion, so it changes the conversation about this happening.
See, what we're looking at here basically are different people's interpretations of words to describe the same thing.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
So the reality is that, you know, our words in this language and somebody else's same word in another language means different things. So I'm not entirely sure if this guy's
Yeah, I think it's
different.
unplugging words.
Yeah.
It's actually unplugging that words are real. Words are real things.
Yeah.
So when that's unplugged,
Mm-hmm.
then you're swimming in the soup of this isness. You don't have the rock solid knowings of where you go.
And the thing about it is, though, is do we need them? Because I did talk about before the necessity for form for me.
Yeah.
It was only when I felt that I had a sufficient understanding of form that I was happy to be formless, therefore not requiring the security of, therefore not requiring the absolute explanation, to be quite happy in the is. And whether is or this is a soup for you or something different for me, so long as it has the same association in here, the resonance is the same, we'll all find our own way to try to make some type of sense of it, or not make sense of it and just happily bask in it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Not make sense of it and happily bask is a nice couple of sentences. Yeah, very cool. I think that's a nice fucking moment there that you hit on that we can. I'm just going to check here because I think we've gone to an hour and 25 minutes.
All right.
It goes.
It does.
Yeah.
You can see how Joe gets 3 hours in, eh?
Yeah. You can it can disappear into it. It can be. It's interesting. I mean, but it's the same anytime. It's time flies when you're having a bit of crack, you know. It's messy. These fucking glasses are messy.
Stick a candle in them.
Yeah, I think that's probably what all they're good for.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, they held the whiskey that has subsequently departed.
Mm-hmm. You can give credit to them for that. Saves us taking it by the neck.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting thing all the same. I mean, I know it's it appears like it's a bleak discussion to talk about this idea of death, but I was always, as a younger person, I was always fascinated by, or I always thought, I read somewhere, I saw in some movie that death is a wonderful reminder about the temporariness of
so it's context.
Well, that was at a very young age. I liked the idea that it's not something to be not that I'm saying that it's something to be afraid of, or I'm not actually saying anything like that, but I think it's just not talked about because it's this bleak, dark place.
I saw that played out with a guy. I was in Japan actually. One of the guys I was there with turned 50, and his demeanour really changed, because the number 50 to him represented a distinct fact in his mind that I've now definitely lived more life than I have left.
Yeah.
And I asked him at the time, will the next half or portion of your life be any richer than the first part even? And it offered him some thought, but he was very ingrained in what death meant to him, and for him it was a conclusion. I think that's a thought process that I wouldn't like to be locked into, because if it's a conclusion, to some extent I think that might be missing the point.
Yeah.
Certainly a marker, but I certainly don't want to be occupied or informed by it. I'm not going to be careless and go out on the motorbike and drive on the wrong side of the M50, because it's not that I don't respect it, but it doesn't govern me.
Yeah. I kind of, I rightly or wrongly say, sometimes I find myself saying to my kids that the experience of, I probably shouldn't be saying this sort of shit, like, but this experience will be felt for the mind and for the body very much like a holiday. the speed to which a 3-week holiday or
Okay.
there is ups and downs of a holiday, but more than likely the holiday comes, and sometimes at the end of a holiday you're going, I can't wait to get fucking home. I've had enough of this holiday. Sometimes it's, I should have made more of this holiday. And sometimes
what is it you're referring to? Having an experience
I'm saying
themselves?
life.
Life.
The experience of for the body and mind.
Mm-hmm.
The experience of a mind and a body that is apparently born, lives an apparent life, and dies. That story comes to an end, and an apparent end. Let's just say.
So when measured at that stage, it'll feel like a holiday.
For the body and for the mind, it'll be so vump. The memories that will flow.
Yeah.
It'll be, that was a great holiday. It'll be that, thank fuck that holiday is over. There won't be there won't be another side for that body and mind to refer then to the holiday.
Okay. So does it join a universal collectiveness?
I'm just saying, for me it's just like deep sleep.
Okay.
And the sense of an ending. I haven't felt the sense of being on a deathbed and known that this is the last breath, but I haven't had that feeling of being on my deathbed, so I can't. I have nothing to refer to. But what I'm saying, my sense of it is, for the body and for the mind, there will be an apparent feeling of, it would be akin to that holiday. It's like a holiday. It'll be that feeling of the holiday's over. I think it was a shit. Fucking so happy to get back home.
Yeah.
I'm so bored or so fed up with that.
Where's home?
Well, I would say this is always home.
This
what's happening is always home.
Okay.
But I think there is an apparent end for a mind and for a body that has lived and will die.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that sense, maybe, I don't know, will be, oh fuck, but I still think you return to this which is ever present. This beyond the words, this cannot be known, is as you use the word. And so that basically, when you say a bubble or say a balloon is floating up in the air, pierce the balloon, the skin of the balloon falls to the ground and will end up with
a bit like life, isn't it?
Yeah. And so that which animated returns to everything.
Yeah, sure.
If it felt separate, then it returns to everything. Yeah. If it lived a life that was utterly separate from this, but if it felt that, I think then there's the feeling of all those scenarios I described. But that's the beginning and end of the story of being alive and death. That in the end, like I've seen a deathbed, I've seen somebody on their deathbed, and the last breath is this exhalation. The last breath that I saw was an exhalation, and it was an unbelievable relief and a smile. I'm curious about what that smile was. I'm curious about it for that person. What was that smile? Was it that it was much ado about nothing, the return to everything, or I'm just curious about that. Obviously,
I've heard it talked about before, and some people talk about it as being, and largely the families talk about it as being that the person looks so happy when they passed.
Yeah.
I often wonder that if you're frowning, it engages a lot of muscles. A relaxed face is actually a much nicer looking face than a engaged frown face.
Yeah.
And I often wondered if biologically, just as that person goes into a relaxed state, that they go into a relaxed physiological state, insofar as it looks relaxed and therefore looks far more passive than being in pain before they go.
Yeah.
So is it just simply the person has exhaled and that's what the meat sack looks like now, that it's just at rest? Or is it something deeper? Is it a knowing where they kind of go, I'm on the way?
And so I haven't a clue, but my own sense of it is
Yeah, thanks for that.
just no, it's just I'm going to use ridiculous words here. I've just done it again. Just before
Yeah.
before you go,
Yeah.
because it's all that remains before there's just everything. I just hid from myself again, and it's I can't believe I did it again.
Right.
I not that I did it again, but there's that kind of sense of reemergence back to who you are, which is everything.
So then, is this potentially a holding cell that you're sent into to go down and learn a lesson? And
Well, I know. I just think you're hiding. It's a game of hide and seek, and it's
from
yourself.
Right. Which is part of the ether.
But you can't hide from yourself.
Yeah.
Because it's everything.
Sure.
You're everything. Let's just say it's not that you are everything. There is everything, and that in that, is fuck. But that's the last. Maybe there's a trigger of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
The mind can somehow play with that before it disappears.
Yeah.
So that what this is you can't hide from yourself. You can never be lost. So the expressions of never lost and never found is because there's only forever this, always this is eternity, always. And it's the game of hide and seek. The first game a kid will learn to play, and the greatest game ever of the self hiding from itself, appearing as something separate from it. But it can never be separate because there is only there's only the self, one without a second, and it cannot see itself. It can't be known, and it can't be held. There might be mirror reflections, but there'll only be, it's like the gusts of winds, mirror reflections of itself. You can't ever know yourself, but somehow apparently through a body and a mind, an apparent separation, there can be a feeling of I am separate, a very held feeling. I am separate from myself.
Yes.
Now there's neither self nor I.
Yeah.
There's just what is.
Yeah.
But in this somehow fucking thing that appears to be happening, there can be that. And I think in death, whether it's felt in life, that final breath can be felt in life, and that can be they might refer to it as awakening or seeing that it was always this and it couldn't go anywhere, and that's why your man in that email mentions death. And that's...
It would be lovely to think that a person who has gone through their life and not maybe had the opportunity to realise the potential or the is or the this, that at that last moment gets to realise the this in that capacity.
Yeah.
So that at the very least, their parting moment, however long that actually really is, and that they
timeless.
Right. So they get to live in that one way or the other.
And so the only difference, what you'd say there, is that they don't get to live in it. Like you said in your quote, you don't get it. And that's the impossible. And that's why there's no end to the final breath, although there's apparent physical end. Because there is no breath, really.
Because
there's no anything. And that's the much ado about nothing. That's the Shakespeare, that's the tale told by an idiot.
Yep.
That's this play of characters appearing, the one appearing as separate. And so there is no, in the end, there's no realisation, only apparent, and in that final, it's fucking, I've fucking done it again. Now there are my words of, and that's the last, before the end, you can have the sense of, it was always, I won't say it was always me, because that's making it personal, but it was always nowhere to go. There's onlyness, there's not heaven and earth, and there's no inner and outer, and no, it's just, there's a world without things, and it's unknowable everything.
As a construct for that moment, it will be very securing for a person to believe that that's what happens.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not doubting for 1 second that that's what's going to happen either way, but I'm not entirely sure if what you're seeing is that. When the parasitological biologically passes, if that sign of gratification is that or if it's not that. I'd have no doubt about the fact that they're going to enter back into that community.
Okay.
So it has to happen.
Say it's impossible to imagine everything, but just imagine everything, right? And in everything, there is, in everything, which is boundless everything, there is an apparent thing that sees this everything. But that apparent thing can't be real.
Okay.
So it's an illusion, or not. It's not an illusion. It's a felt sense of here and everywhere, right?
Okay.
So when that's gone, there's just everywhere or nothing, and it's inexplicable because there's no reference point.
Yeah.
There's no safe ground. There's no here nor there, inner or outer, up or down. And so from my perspective, in death, then that, say, the pain or that seeing that there's here and then everywhere, there's just everywhere and it's inexplicable. So
that's
any
a
kind
liberation though, and a freedom.
That's liberation. And so then that sense of liberation obviously can there's this idea of die before you die. So dying into life. So it's no longer becomes my life. It's just life, and and as it always was. But it's still utterly unknowable. But I think it can be sensed or felt or whatever.
What's whatever?
Well, whatever it is that I could talk for fucking hours and hours, and it wouldn't get anywhere. It wouldn't describe the.
Does it need a description?
It doesn't need a description, no. So that's maybe whatever is kind of.
That's its own statement.
Yeah, but it sounds reductive, but it's. I don't know, whatever it is. Maybe it's just a fucking character thing of summing myself up or stopping myself from going further. But it's. Yeah, I suppose whatever the fuck we were talking about there is we were talking about death, and then death in life, and that email from that guy, and I love those words. I've come to love that sort of soup of isness, or anyway, what do you think?
Where do I? In this nothingness.
Yeah.
I think one way or the other, irrespective of how enlightened we think we have become or are becoming, that we will always try to seek some level of understanding by looking for something tangible. And maybe in that pursuit of looking for something tangible, you might eventually realise that actually it's intangible. But in order to realise that it's intangible, you must understand that there is something that is tangible. Now, what I mean by this is that you can't understand free flow unless you understand that something is not free. You can't have freedom unless you understand there's a lack of freedom. You need to understand that there's a restraint to be unrestrained.
Yeah.
So in that particular sense, I think it's okay for people to go on looking for the path, to realise there's no path.
And I think in this liberation,
yes,
it can be seen that it was never separate nor constrained.
Right, it always is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Form to formless.
Is.
Yeah.
There you go, yeah.
I like the sound of it.
I didn't put a like on your comment. I said, I'll come back to him on that.
You better get on there and do it.
I'll obviously put a like now.
I need that external gratification.
I'll stick that like on it right now. Thank you very much, buddy.
Thank you.
That was great. I
Pleasure.
really enjoyed that. Hi, if you like the conversation that I just had and you'd like more, please hit the subscribe button. Thank you.